Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Through Review 422. Today we're going to talk about Orléans, and this is a somewhat new release from Tasty Minstrel Games. Came out at Essen last year, and then was kickstarted and now brought over by Tasty Minstrel to the United States and North America and so on. And it is a 2 to 4 player sort of deck building game, but you actually use a bag to build your deck, and you throw in these little chits which represent different colored workers, and you'll pull a certain number of those out and then activate different actions on your player board to do different activities and score points and get more workers and then more special abilities and stuff like that. So let's jump into how the game works, and then I'll tell you what I think of it. So Orléans in a lot of ways is a very modern Euro. You can see here a couple of nondescript characters on the cover here, and the rule book says you are trying to achieve dominance in various areas in medieval France. And that about sums up the amount of theme in the game, at least in terms of its presentation. There is a little bit of theme here in how the mechanics actually work. So we can see here all of the pieces set up as if it was a 2-player game. I've got some other pieces in the box. It takes up a little bit more room with more players, of course. Now each player is going to get their own player board. This does look a little bit busy, but it's really not very busy at all. You can see very circular spaces, and these are different actions that you can take. And you've got a main board divided into 2 main areas. On the right hand side, you've got various routes with randomly distributed goods all throughout. This is going to change up based on the player count. And you'll be moving your merchant figure around collecting these goods for points at the end of the game. And on the left hand side, you've got kind of a busy area. You've got multiple tracks that players can move down, as well as you can see different piles of workers associated with those tracks. So you'll be taking actions to gather those new workers, move up sort of these different semi-technology types of trees to give you bonuses and more money and new technologies and things like that. And then you have this development track at the bottom of the board, and this is very important. You can see here there's this 2 with this kind of star, and this is going to basically score you more and more points as you move down this track. The more trading stations and citizens that you collect are going to be worth more and more points. So if you've moved up here to the 5, each of those is going to be worth 5 points at the end of the game. And then finally, you've got this sort of town hall board. And this is very much a spot where you're going to be sort of retiring these different types of workers to collect little bonuses, and then also collect the different citizen tiles that you can see here again to score at the end of the game. Now before I talk about how to actually win the game, let's go through quickly how a turn actually works. Now this star player marker, the shield, is going to move around the table every round. There's going to be 18 rounds. They go pretty quickly. And the first thing you're going to do every turn is reveal one of these hourglass tiles. And you can see here I've already revealed the pilgrimage tile. The first event every game is going to be the pilgrimage, which means you can't go collect monks from the monastery. So nobody can get any monks in the first round. But there's a variety of these, and this is also a round tracker. There's 18 total of these. Now, I'm not going to go into super detail with these. A lot of these are going to be sort of bad, like taxes and harvests, or they're going to be some kind of income. But you're going to reveal them at the beginning of the round, and at the end of the round, you've got to kind of deal with them. So you might need to harvest to give a wheat or some wine or something like that, or else pay a penalty, and the game calls it torture. You may have to undergo torture, which you have to give up some certain things or give up development points and so on like that. But I will say the hourglass tiles or the events, they do keep the game on rails, and they do add an interesting bit of valuation to some of the different goods and things. So certain goods are worth more points, but some of the goods and stuff that you have that aren't worth as much, you still want some of those because they're easy to sort of slough off or pay off some of these different types of events. So after revealing the event, you're going to take a look at the farm track. Whoever is at the furthest to the right is going to get a coin, and whoever is the furthest back is going to lose a coin. Unless you're playing a 2-player game, then only the leader gains a coin. Any ties, nobody gets or loses anything. And then each player simultaneously is going to reach into their cloth bags that you can see here, and they're going to draw out a certain number of the workers. And the number of tiles that you're going to draw out is dictated here on this night track. So at the start of the game, everybody can pull out 4, but as you move up, you can get more and more and more to pull out each turn. And each player starts the game out with 4 of the workers that you can see here with a little sort of bottom border in their color. So everybody starts off on the same footing, and everybody will be drawing the same workers to start each game. And then you can simultaneously place these workers out into the different action spaces on your player board. If it does become important to do it in turn order, then you can go ahead and do it in turn order, but 9 times out of 10 it's not necessarily going to matter. And the way that you're going to take these actions is very simple. You're going to place workers out anywhere that you wish on the board. Now once you fill up all of the spaces associated with a particular action, so in this case we're filling up the spaces with the castle action, then you'll be able to actually take that action, in this case to get a new knight and move up the castle track. Now you don't have to put out all of your workers, you can keep some of them back, or you can put out like one on a particular action, leave him out there. He's just going to sit there. And then on your next turn, when you draw some more tiles, maybe you'll have the tiles that you need. Because as you play along, you're gonna get more and more tiles. So maybe you can do like 2 or 3 things over here, and you've got just 1 or 2 over here to, you know, get that 4th action possibly. So you go, I'm gonna leave him out. We're gonna activate. I know I'll probably draw the other colors that I'll need on my next turn, hopefully, to activate them on the following turn. Now, once everybody has assigned all of their workers, you'll go through in turn order and activate any of the spots that have filled up all of their open slots. And when you do so, you'll clear the space off, and then the tiles that you use will go back into the bag, along with any new worker tiles you might have acquired on that turn. So let's go ahead and work through the various action spaces on the player board. First, here we have the ship. You can see it takes a white, a blue, and a red worker. And when you do that, you can simply move your merchant token 1 city over water, collecting any of the goods that are on that route. Next, we have the wagon, and this is the same type of action, except you're going to move over a land route and collect any goods that you may pass over. Next, we have the guild hall, and when we take this action, you can put one of your trading posts out in the city where your figure is located. Now, only 1 trading post can exist in any city, except for the starting city of Orléans, when each player can have 1 of their trading posts there. Next, we have the castle action here. And very simply, you're going to move your cube up the track. In this case, this is going to allow us to draw more tiles at the start of our turn, and we're going to take one of the knights who we can now put into our bag and use on future turns. Next, we have the farmhouse, and this takes a blue and brown worker. And we simply move up the farm track, take a farmer from the supply, and you'll notice we can also gather a good from the general supply, matching the space that we moved to. Next, we have the village, and this is we can get 1 of 3 different workers. If we choose the blue worker, we're going to get a blue worker, and we're going to move up the track and collect a little bit of money. If we decide to collect a brown worker, we're going to go ahead and move up the track, get a brown worker, but then we're also going to be able to grab one of these technology tiles. And the technology tile we'll set aside, but then on their next turn, we can go ahead and place that out onto any of the spots, and it sort of acts as a worker of that type forever and ever and ever. So we no longer need to have a worker of that type to spend. Finally, if we decide to get one of the traders, we'll move up this track, we'll take one of these black tiles here, and then we'll be able to grab one of the technology tiles. And there's 2 stacks of these. There's like a level 1 and then a level 2. Now, on your first initiation of this action, you can only grab from the level 1 tile, but then every time you do it after that, you can grab from either. And there's a whole mess of these. You're going to dig through, find the one that you want. For example, you can see here's the shipping line. This only costs 1 of the blue workers, and then you can move up the development track, which I'll show you in a second. And this really is the whole game. You're going to dig through, find the ones that you want. You're going to get a handful during the game that you can use, and these are going to give you sort of your individuality as different players decide to choose different things. This is really going to dictate in some way your choice of this, the strategy that you're going to go for in this particular game. And there's even a variant in the rule book that says you can sort of take turns removing them from the beginning of the game. So if Billy over there is just totally abusing this every time you play, maybe he gets one that he gets a bunch of development points or something that he likes to do, and you're like, I'm sick of you taking that one. You always take that one first, and then, or I am forced to take it, so you don't take it. So you can just remove a certain number of these based on the player count, and so you can just change up the strategy. Say, we're not playing with that one this time. We're going to play with these, and you're forced to do different strategies, which is kind of a neat thing. But this really is the heart of the game in my estimation in terms of the replayability and how you're going to be able to come at it, do a different tile this time, I'm going to try something else, try a different strategy, and then go from there. Next, we have the university space, and this is where you're going to collect one of the scholars. And like everything else, you're going to move up this track, you're going to get a scholar, and then you're going to get a different amount of development points based on which space you're currently moving to. And that's simply, again, moving spaces up this development track. Anytime you see those books, you're going to move up this track. Now, if you notice, there's different citizen tiles mixed throughout the different spaces on the game. The first player to get to such a space will collect and hold that citizen tile. And as I said, at the end of the game, you're going to get a certain number of points depending on where you are in this development track. So if you were up here at the 5 or further, each trading post that you put out on the board and each citizen tile that you collect is going to be worth 5 points at the end of the game. So there is a significant amount of points to be had by moving up this track. Let's look at the last couple of spaces on your board. Next, we've got the monastery. This is going to allow you to grab one of the monks. And these are sort of wild. They can act as any of the different colored workers that you have, so they're very useful in that case. Next, we have the Scriptorium, and here you just simply move up on the development track. And finally, we have the town hall, and this is the one spot on your board that you don't have to fill up. You can put 1 or 2 workers here of any color that you wish. And what you're going to do is move them over here to this town hall board and put them on a matching space. Now in this case, you can't use a monk as a wild. You've got to actually match the colors here no matter what. And then you're going to collect the reward associated with that space. So in this case, if you move, let's say, a yellow or a black tile here, you would get 2 coins. And whoever fills in the last space is going to receive the citizen tile matching this particular spot. And once everybody's done, you resolve whatever the event was that was drawn at the beginning of the turn. You go around and around and around for 18 turns, and then here's how you're going to score points. You can see all the different goods are worth a varying amount of points. You get 1 point for each coin, and then like I said, you take and add the trading stations with the citizens and multiply that by however far along you are on the development track. And that's pretty much the entire game. It does actually play very quickly and very smoothly. It's 18 turns, which I read in the rulebook. I was like, well, like 18 turns is a lot, but the turns are very quick, especially once you learn how to play the game. This is interesting to me. The only game that I've played like this is Hyperborea, where it's got this sort of bag building type of thing. And I think there's a few games coming out in the future that are going to be more bag building, but these are only 2 that I know of that use this bag building concept. I mean, I gotta say I like this more than Hyperborea. I did like Hyperborea, but this one to me, even though it's a little bit more abstract and not as thematic, it has some sort of thematic mechanics to it. So the theme sort of in the presentations really pasted on. It's just like this worker is a red, he's a knight, you know, this one does that. But you kind of get the sense of how you make use of those workers and then sort of retire them to town hall or put them in, you know, make them politicians and put them out to pasture and get rid of them. And then, you know, they're not really useful for you. Just that whole sort of system is very interesting. So you kind of like gear your sort of whatever you are, your empire or your business or whatever, down a certain path through picking the different technology tiles. And that's going to kind of force you to kind of focus on a certain type of worker more than others, because maybe you need to use a lot more blue workers to do your strategy or red workers or whatever it is. And then you sort of retire off some of the other ones. Now, you know, you don't want to get rid of everything and all like that, of course. But there's a lot of different ways to sort of explore the game as well, because not only are you exploring the different technology tiles, you might go heavy on moving your merchant around and collecting lots of goods that way. And you might sort of neglect the different character tracks that you move up. You may not do that as much. You might go for different, you know, might go heavy on the development track, because you're going to sort of a balance between getting like the really good goods and different materials that you can get versus going heavy on development and then, you know, collecting citizens and putting out the workstations and so on. So it's very much a race to grab those goods and grab the spots where the different workstations are, but then also to get up the development track and get some of those different technology tiles there. So there's a nice sort of balance there. And even though, like, I can't really, this is a weird thing, I can't really sort of mentally attach myself to like, I'm in this time and place and I'm doing this, other than I'm like some abstract, you know, medieval France. The things that I'm doing is very interesting and very engaging and does pull me in thematically, which makes no sense because I can't attach it to anything. I can't say I am this person doing this. It just feels like, okay, I'm kind of doing the same old Euro thing, but it's a little bit different and a little bit interesting about how you're doing it, because I've not really done anything like this. Now, Hyperborea is kind of like it, but this is a very different feel. And I like how you can just sort of pick whatever technology that you want as well. I like that kind of freedom that it has. And sort of how the board is dealt out and stuff is going to really kind of change it up, because you might go, oh, there's a really fine route of all these, you know, these cloth tiles, which are the ones you get a lot of points for. I'm going to go after that. And you might say, you know what, you go for that. I'm going to go over here and get this wheat, which is going to help me on the harvest, and I'm going to be able to chuck those, because you can't chuck you don't really want to chuck the ones that are worth a lot of points, but you can't chuck those to satisfy harvests and taxes and things. But I'm going to go over here, I'm going to work on getting my trade stations down. So in some ways it feels like it should be restrictive, it should be a point salad game, but it doesn't end up being that. And I think that's what the most interesting thing about this is. It's on the surface, it's like, oh, I bet this is like a Feld game. You know, first you kind of look at it, but it's not. It has some extra different depth and things that I don't think we've really seen quite in this way. I'm not trying to, I'm kind of saying I feel like I'm overselling how different it is. I mean, there are some familiarities and things, you get points for a certain amount of goods and stuff, but just the way it paces out and the amount of freedom that you have, I think is very refreshing, that you don't see in a lot of games these days that are sort of like your modern Euros. Yeah. The only thing I wanted to point out was maybe some negatives just to stay away from. I don't find these negative, but people I've played them with did is it's kind of solitary because you're kind of picking and, you know, trying to figure out, okay, I'm going to send these workers here to do this over here. And then they're kind of like waiting for me to get done, or I'm waiting for them to get done. And there's a little bit of AP there. So it's kind of like a little bit of solitary AP stuff. A little bit, not a lot, because like I said, you got to rush and grab goods and get the right technologies that you want. So it's definitely engaging and interactive in that way. But I did find some people have some frustration with that. That made it seem like it was going on a little bit too long, but after playing it a couple of times, that really cuts down on it. I think it says, what's it say? Hold on, sorry. I should have this memorized. 90 minutes? Yeah, that's about right. It's not gonna go much longer than 90 minutes after you've played it, probably once or twice. So I think it's good. I think people should check it out. Definitely a different game. It seems on surface like a lot of Euros that I've played, but it's not really. So definitely take a look at it. Orléans, thanks.